For centuries, the world has been sold a lie so deep it has shaped how millions see an entire continent. Africa, they said, was a dark continent, a place without history, without civilization, without progress. This lie justified the slave trade, the brutal colonial conquests, and the ongoing exploitation of African peoples and lands. But the truth is the exact opposite. Africa is the birthplace of humanity. It is the cradle of civilizations older than any in Europe or Asia. Its rivers, forests, and deserts nurtured kingdoms and empires rich with culture, innovation, and power. The myth of a dark continent was carefully constructed by colonial powers to erase the legacy of African greatness and to justify their theft and violence. The erasure did not happen by accident. History books told in Europe and America were written by conquerors, designed to keep Africans in the margins and silence their true stories. They painted Africans as primitive and backwards, denying the millions of years of human ingenuity that came from the continent. Today, we start by rejecting this lie. We dive into the stories of forgotten empires, shattered kingdoms, and resilient peoples who built the foundations of human civilization and who continue to inspire resistance and hope. When people think of ancient Africa, they often think only of Egypt. The pyramids, the pharaohs, the Nile, these are symbols of African achievement that few deny. But what many fail to understand is that Egypt is just a piece of a much larger puzzle. Africa's history stretches far beyond the banks of the Nile. Thousands of years before the pyramids, complex societies thrived across the continent. In West Africa, rich cultures were creating sophisticated art and metallurgy. In Central Africa, kingdoms rose with their own languages, trade routes, and spiritual beliefs. In the Horn of Africa, advanced empires connected Africa to the rest of the ancient world. The idea that Egypt stands alone as Africa's beginning is a narrow, Eurocentric viewpoint. In fact, many of Egypt's own culture and knowledge were influenced by the peoples of Nubia and Kush to the south. The African continent is a tapestry of interwoven civilizations, each with its own story and contribution. Recognizing this is essential to breaking the chains of ignorance and reclaiming a full history. Just south of Egypt lay the Kingdom of Kush, an empire that rivaled and at times ruled Egypt itself. Between roughly 1070 BCE and 350 CE, Kush was a force of power and culture centered around its capital at Meroe. The Kushites were black Africans who built their own pyramids, temples, and palaces, many larger and more numerous than Egypt's. They controlled trade routes across the Nile and beyond, dealing in gold, ivory, iron, and exotic goods. During Egypt's 25th dynasty, so 747–656 BCE, Kushite kings became pharaohs of Egypt, reclaiming the throne and ruling in a time now called the Black Pharaohs period. King Pi and Taharka are remembered for defending Egypt against foreign invaders and commissioning massive building projects. Yet, Western history often dismisses Kush as a minor kingdom or an offshoot of Egypt, erasing its independent legacy. Kush was a sophisticated state with its own language, art, and religion. Its iron smelting technology was among the most advanced in the ancient world, fueling its military and economy. The story of Kush challenges the false narrative of African inferiority and highlights a proud lineage of black rulers who shaped one of the world's great civilizations. Across the Red Sea, in the Horn of Africa, the Aksumite Empire flourished from about 100 CE to 940 CE. Centered in modern Ethiopia and Eritrea, Aksum controlled the trade routes between Africa, Arabia, and India. Aksum was one of the great powers of the ancient world, renowned for its massive obelisks, some towering over 24 meters tall, which still stand today as marvels of engineering. Aksum was the first African empire to officially embrace Christianity, under King Izana in the 4th century CE, centuries before Europe's Christian kingdoms rose. It was a trading empire that exported ivory, gold, and exotic animals, connecting Africa to the wider world. Despite this, Aksum is rarely included in mainstream historical narratives, overshadowed by Europe and the Middle East. But Aksum's legacy endures in Ethiopia's unique Christian traditions and cultural continuity, showing that Africa was never isolated, but a center of global interaction and influence. Thousands of years ago, in West Africa, the Nok culture, circa 1000 BCE to 300 CE, was one of the earliest in the world to smelt iron and create lifelike terracotta sculptures. These were not isolated achievements, but evidence of a highly sophisticated society with skills in metallurgy, agriculture, and art. Later, around the 9th century CE, Igbo Ukwu in modern Nigeria produced intricate bronze and copper artifacts, revealing complex trade networks and artistic mastery. These discoveries prove that African peoples invented and developed technology independently, contradicting the narrative that metallurgy and craftsmanship came to Africa only through outside influence. Nok and Igbo Ukwu cultures laid the foundations for later West African empires, showcasing a long tradition of innovation and creativity. On the coast of present-day Tunisia stood Carthage, a city founded by Phoenician settlers but deeply African in culture and influence. At its height, Carthage rivaled Rome in military power and economic might, commanding trade across the Mediterranean and North Africa. The Carthaginian general Hannibal famously crossed the Alps with elephants to challenge Rome itself. But after Carthage was destroyed in the Punic Wars, its history was written by the victors, Romans who depicted Carthage as a villainous foreign city. In truth, Carthage was an African superpower, blending Phoenician, Berber, and African cultures. Its maritime empire controlled trade and culture for centuries, but its story has been marginalized or framed as a footnote in European history. From the 6th to the 13th centuries, the Ghana Empire thrived in West Africa. It was not modern Ghana, but a vast empire in what is now southeastern Mauritania and western Mali. Ghana controlled the trans-Saharan gold and salt trade, amassing incredible wealth and power. The empire's rulers maintained a complex bureaucracy and military to protect their lands. Its capital, Kumbi Saleh, was a bustling city with markets filled with gold, ivory, and slaves. However, in Western textbooks, Ghana is often reduced to a vague legend of Gold Coast, ignoring its political sophistication and role as a trade hub. When Ghana declined, the Mali Empire rose to take its place. Under the leadership of Mansa Musa, 1312 to 1337, Mali became the wealthiest empire of its time. Mansa Musa's legendary pilgrimage to Mecca displayed his wealth in gold, astounding the Islamic world and Europe alike. But Mali was more than wealth. Timbuktu and Djenné became centers of Islamic scholarship, housing libraries, universities, and schools that taught everything from astronomy to poetry. Mali's legacy is a powerful testament to African intellectual achievement. Yet many still reduce Mali to tales of gold, missing the empire's true cultural and scholarly richness. Great Zimbabwe is one of Africa's most iconic archaeological sites. Between the 11th and 15th centuries, the Shona people built vast stone complexes with walls up to 11 meters high. Great Zimbabwe was the political and economic heart of the region, controlling gold trade routes across southern Africa. European colonists long denied that Africans could build such structures, instead attributing them to outsiders. This racist myth was part of a broader effort to erase African achievement and justify colonial rule. The truth is clear. Great Zimbabwe was an African city built by Africans, symbolizing centuries of state building, trade, and culture. Central Africa was home to powerful kingdoms like Congo and Ndongo. These empires had complex political systems, international diplomacy, and thriving economies. In Ndongo, Queen Nzinga emerged as a fierce leader who resisted Portuguese colonizers in the 17th century. She forged alliances, led armies, and fought to protect her people's freedom. Her story challenges the notion that African women were passive or powerless. Queens like Nzinga symbolize African resistance and leadership against imperialism, yet their stories remain marginalized in history. Ethiopia is often called the Lion of Africa for its resilience. Unlike most of the continent, Ethiopia resisted European colonization, maintaining sovereignty for centuries. The Battle of Adwa in 1896 was a landmark moment when Ethiopian forces defeated the invading Italians. This victory became a symbol of African pride and independence. Ethiopia's unique Orthodox Christian culture, language, and traditions survived centuries of pressure. But even Ethiopia's story is sometimes romanticized or simplified in Western narratives. Its history is complex and deserves full recognition. After centuries of colonialism, much of African history was rewritten to fit European agendas. Artifacts were stolen and hidden in museums. Oral histories were dismissed as myths. The Dark Continent narrative was institutionalized in education and media. This rewriting served to justify oppression and deny African people their heritage. But today, African scholars, activists, and communities are reclaiming their stories. They are digging, researching, and rewriting history on their own terms.